What makes someone truly excellent? I mean, is it just one single dazzling quality, or is it something, far more intricate, a kind of masterful interplay of different strengths all working together?
That's a really central question, isn't it?
Yeah, and today we're plunging into an ancient idea that promises to shed some light on exactly this. The Stoic concept of the unity of virtue. It's like a powerful philosophical blueprint for building, well, an unshakable moral core.
That's right. And for the Stoics, virtue wasn't some kind of pick-and-choose menu of good traits. They held this really quite radical belief.
Right.
You couldn't genuinely possess one virtue without possessing them all.
So not a checklist then.
Not at all. It's an integrated, indivisible whole, like a single state of moral excellence.
Okay, and our deep dive today is all about unpacking this profound idea, what the Stoics actually called virtue in the singular.
Yeah.
Right? And understanding why it's so fundamental to living a truly flourishing life.
Exactly. And we've pulled from a really rich collection of sources for this, from the bedrock texts of Cicero, Seneca, Epictetus.
The big names.
Yeah, the heavy hitters, but also insightful modern interpretations and biographies. It all helps us unravel this unified vision of character.
And the goal isn't just theory, right? We want listeners to discover how these four cardinal virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, aren't just separate ideals floating around.
No, they're interconnected powers. They harmonize to create this single, unshakable state of moral excellence. Our mission, really, is to see how this profound way of being can guide us toward a well-lived life, equipping you, the listener, with insights you can actually apply.
Okay, let's really dig into this foundational concept then. Because when we talk about Stoicism, often the focus is on controlling emotions or enduring hardship. But at its heart, the Stoic philosophy proposes something much deeper about virtue itself.
It really does.
Seeing it not just as a collection of good traits, but as this singular, unified excellence.
Precisely. The Stoic definition of virtue is incredibly distinct and honestly quite challenging. For them, virtue wasn't just a good thing. It was fundamentally the only good.
The only good. That's a huge claim.
It is, and it's a crucial starting point because it dictates pretty much everything else in their ethics. They insisted that virtue is sufficient for happiness, or eudaimonia.
Right, eudaimonia. Not just feeling happy, but that deeper sense of flourishing.
Exactly. It's not fleeting pleasure or even just contentment. It's a deep, abiding state of human flourishing and, well, genuine well-being.
So the really profound insight here is that the Stoics basically decouple your ultimate well-being from anything outside your own moral will, your own character.
They absolutely do.
And that's not just some philosophical nicety. It feels like a radical reframing. It empowers you, potentially, to be invulnerable to external misfortune. It makes you the sole architect of your happiness.
That's the core idea. External circumstances, things like wealth, health, social status, they might be preferred or dispreferred, sure.
Things you'd rather have than not have.
Of course. But they're not inherently good or bad in the moral sense because they don't determine your virtue. Your virtue comes from your choices, your judgments.
And it's not about being passive, you were saying.
Yeah.
Like some detached observer.
Not at all. Virtue is described very clearly as an active form of rational agency. It's not about being a good person just by thinking good thoughts in isolation. It's about how you act and how you reason in the world moment by moment.
So it's constant work.
It's a relentless, ongoing application of practical wisdom to every single endeavor, personal, political, social. It's aiming to control how those endeavors are expressed in your attention, your imagination, your intentions, how you deliberate, your emotions, your actual conduct.
Wow, that covers pretty much everything.
It does. And this continuous, intentional effort leads us right back to that concept of Stoic virtue in the singular. It's not separate qualities you tick off a list, but a unified, indivisible excellence that informs all your actions.
That makes me wonder then, if it's not just passive thinking, what are some of the immediate, maybe smaller, tangible ways we see this active agency play out in someone's daily life? Beyond, big heroic gestures.
Oh, it's absolutely in the small decisions, all the time. It's how you respond when your train is delayed. Do you choose patience or do you fume with frustration? That's active agency.
Okay.
It's how you approach a difficult conversation at work. Do you opt for clear, honest communication, even if it's uncomfortable? or do you try to avoid it?
Right, the path of least resistance versus the path of virtue.
Exactly. It's choosing to learn from a mistake instead of just dwelling in self-pity or blaming someone else. Each of these moments, no matter how seemingly minor, is a chance to actively engage your rational agency and express that unified virtue. It's a constant inner practice.
And this unified view of virtue, it's not just some quirky detail they added on, is it? It sounds like it's part of a much larger, incredibly coherent philosophical system. The Stoics really saw everything as connected.
Oh, absolutely. What's truly fascinating here is how deeply the Stoics believed in the interconnectedness of their entire philosophy. They didn't just see logic, physics, and ethics as three separate school subjects you study.
Right, not like different departments in a university.
Exactly. They saw them as one thing, the rational universe, considered from three different but mutually consistent points of view.
Okay, that's a powerful way to put it.
And they use these great analogies to illustrate this unity. Imagine philosophy as an animal, logic is the bones and sinews, ethics is the flesh, and physics, the study of nature, is the soul.
Huh, interesting.
Or picture an egg. Logic is the protective shell, ethics is the nourishing white, and physics is the core, the yolk.
I like the egg one. It makes it seem very organic.
It does. Another one is a fertile field. Logic is the surrounding wall providing structure. Ethics is the fruit that grows. And physics is the soil and climate that make it all possible.
So these aren't just neat categories, they're deeply interwoven.
Completely. As Cicero's character Cato famously put it, and this quote really stuck with me, what is there which is not so linked to something else that all would collapse if you moved a single letter?
Wow. That really drives home the idea of how everything is so intertwined. It's a truly holistic system.
It is. This isn't just some tidy philosophical categorization. It speaks to a deep, organic connection between understanding the world, physics, reasoning correctly, logic, and living well, ethics.
Okay, so if it's all one system, how does this unity thesis, as you called it, play out in actual practice? It sounds like it demands a kind of complete overhaul of one's inner and outer life.
Well, it's definitely a process of refinement, not just acquiring separate skills. The unity thesis means that as your practical intelligence, your basic ability to figure things out matures into genuine practical wisdom.
Phronesis.
Exactly, phronesis. As that matures, it becomes better and better at subordinating vices to virtues, coordinating the virtues to avoid conflicts, and expressing those virtues in conduct so as to optimize their accomplishment.
So it's like becoming a better conductor of your own inner orchestra.
That's a great way to think about it. It isn't about achieving some static state of perfection and then you're done. It's about continually refining your agency, your ability to act, to align it more and more closely with reason.
And the ultimate embodiment of this is the figure of the sage.
Yes, the ideal sage is the hypothetical figure who embodies this perfect integration. They reach the limit of human capability, contending successfully with the widest array of endeavors.
A kind of philosophical superhero.
In a way, yes, but grounded in reason. The sage is described as being dyed deep with justice, which signifies that their entire being, every fiber, is imbued with this integrated virtue. It's a relentless, active pursuit, not a passive state of being, and it's always aimed at that singular, unified excellence.
Okay, so if virtue is this single unified excellence, how do we even begin to cultivate it? It sounds daunting, but the Stoics broke it down, right? Into 4 essential powers of 4 cardinal virtues.
They did, and as we'll see, these aren't just separate pillars holding up the roof. They're more like different facets of a single diamond, each reflecting and enhancing the others.
Nice analogy. Let's start with the one that seems to guide the others, the one that illuminates the path. Practical wisdom.
Right, practical wisdom, phronesis, or sometimes called prudence. This is often considered the most fundamental because it directs all the others. It's not just book smarts or abstract theoretical knowledge.
Not just knowing about things.
No, it's what the Stoics called the art of living, the technotoubou. It's the practical know-how, the skill to discern what's truly good, bad, or indifferent in any given situation.
Good, bad, and indifferent, those key Stoic categories.
Exactly. Wisdom is the virtue that helps us navigate life's complexities, figure out what is genuinely within our control, that crucial Stoic distinction, and make sound, rational judgments about our actions and our responses.
So it's about seeing clearly what's what, understanding the situation rationally, and then knowing how to act based on that understanding. It's like having a reliable mental compass that always points towards what's right and reasonable.
Precisely. And a key part of this is how we manage our impressions, those initial thoughts, feelings, or perceptions that just pop into our minds automatically.
The raw data of experience.
Kind of, yes. Now, what converts a mere impression, just a fleeting thought, into something you actually believe and decide to act on, is what the Stoics called assent, synchetathesis.
Assent, like giving your stamp of approval to a thought.
Exactly. Think of it like a mental yes or no switch. The wise person doesn't just automatically hit yes on every thought or impulse that comes along. They pause, they examine it, they hold it up to reason, and then they decide whether to give their assent.
So it's a filter.
A very important filter. Their assent is characterized by strength and good tension, meaning it's firm and rational. This makes them far less susceptible to faulty judgments that lead to irrational emotions like excessive fear, anger, or desire.
And it sounds like this requires constant mental practice. It makes me think again of Marcus Aurelius using his meditations almost like a personal training manual or, as you said, a therapy journal. How crucial was that kind of internal dialogue for the Stoics in actually cultivating wisdom?
Oh, incredibly crucial. That's a perfect observation. Marcus Aurelius's meditations served as a deeply personal form of self-mentoring, absolutely. He consciously cultivated practical wisdom by writing down notes to himself, reminding himself of key principles, quoting philosophers he admired like Epictetus.
His philosophical coach, in a way.
Definitely. And he even invented these inner dialogues to conjure up an inner mentor to challenge his own thoughts. This was his systematic way of repeatedly applying rational thought to his experiences and impressions, almost like pre-programming his responses to life's inevitable challenges.
And one of his key techniques for this was something called depreciation by analysis, or cognitive distancing.
Yes, that's a fascinating and very practical technique he used, particularly to manage unhealthy desires or attachment.
How did that work? Can you give us an example?
Certainly. For instance, when confronted with, say, luxurious roasted meats at a banquet, something designed to tempt the appetite.
Which he probably saw a lot of as emperor.
No doubt. He would mentally strip away the appealing presentation and the delicious smell and think of them simply as a dead bird, a dead fish, a dead pig.
Huh. That certainly takes the glamour out of it.
Doesn't it? Similarly, he'd view fine Falernian wine not as a sophisticated pleasure, but just as fermented grape juice. By deliberately focusing on the raw, underlying material components rather than the appealing labels or sensory experiences, he aimed to detach himself emotionally, to weaken the grip of potentially unhealthy appetites.
So it's not about saying pleasure is bad, necessarily, but about seeing things as they truly are without the distortion of excessive desire. It's applying wisdom directly to your appetites.
Exactly. It's a way of maintaining perspective and control.
That's incredibly practical for everyday life. It's like having a built-in mental reality check button you can press when you feel desire getting out of hand.
Indeed, and this really raises an important question for us today, doesn't it? How do we apply this art of living, this wisdom, to our own daily choices, to become more like Marcus in our own way?
Right, how do we become advanced students, the proficientes?
Well, it boils down to constantly examining our impressions and impulses with constant attention and questioning. It's not passive, it's active scrutiny. This consistent practice, this discipline, is what puts you on the path. It's not a one-time fix, but an ongoing, rigorous discipline of self-awareness and rational evaluation.
Okay, so wisdom helps us see clearly and make good judgments. But what happens when those judgments lead us down a difficult path? One that requires facing fear or pain or adversity. That's where the next virtue, courage, truly comes into play.
Exactly.
How did the Stoics define courage, or Andrea? Was it just about battlefield bravery?
No, for the Stoics, courage was much more profound than just physical bravery, though it included that. Chrysippus, one of the key figures in Stoicism, defined it as the knowledge of enduring vicissitudes.
Vicissitudes, the ups and downs of life.
Precisely. Or as a disposition of soul in suffering and enduring, obedient to the supreme law of our being without fear. It's a kind of steadfastness that comes directly from understanding what is truly within our control. Our judgments, our will, and what is not, external events, the actions of others.
So it's an internal strength, a mental fortitude.
Absolutely. Epictetus powerfully highlighted this when he said that lack of endurance and lack of self-restraint are by far the worst and most disgusting faults. He wasn't talking about physical weakness, but weakness of character, lack of inner resilience. Courage, for them, was primarily this internal strength.
So it's not necessarily about being fearless then, but about how you respond to fear, especially the fear of big things like pain, hardship, even death itself. That seems like a critical distinction.
It is. The Stoics advised confidence toward death and caution toward the fear of it. They weren't reckless, they recognized dangers, but they understood that death is natural and inevitable, not an evil in itself. The fear of death, however, that can be irrational and harmful.
And the fear of pain, too.
Yes, they taught that the fear of pain does more harm than pain itself, which is a profound psychological insight, isn't it? Our apprehension about a future event, the dread, often causes more suffering than the actual event when it arrives. Anticipatory anxiety can be crippling.
That makes sense. And what about smaller adversities, like insults? How did courage apply there?
Epictetus had some very practical advice. He famously suggested responding to insults like a rock, just meeting them with an unreacting silence that completely nullifies the insult's power. If it doesn't land, it has no effect.
Takes the wind out of their sails.
Completely. Or, alternatively, he suggested using self-deprecating humor. Again, this deflates the attack by showing it doesn't hit a vulnerable spot. Both strategies remove the power from the aggressor by refusing to engage on their emotional terms. That takes courage.
That immediately brings to mind that incredible, almost unbelievable story of Captain James Stockdale. That has to be one of the most powerful, modern examples of this kind of internal courage, doesn't it?
It truly is. It's hard to find a more compelling, modern parallel to Stoic courage in action. Shot down over North Vietnam, Captain Stockdale endured 7.5 years in brutal prison camps. We're talking torture, isolation, intense psychological warfare.
Unimaginable conditions.
Absolutely. And when his plane was hit, he famously told himself, "I am leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus."
Wow. At that exact moment.
Yes. And this wasn't just a casual remark he made up later. He had studied Epictetus. He deeply understood the principles of endurance and equanimity he would need to survive, mentally and morally intact.
And he lived it.
He absolutely lived it. He deliberately resisted his captors, organized other prisoners, and famously, even purposely and severely injured himself, disfiguring his face to avoid being used in a propaganda video. His story vividly illustrates courage, not as an absence of fear, but as a practical skill, a mental fortitude honed through philosophical practice. It allowed him to maintain endurance and equanimity under almost unimaginable duress. He actively chose his response, his inner stance, hour by hour, day by day, for years.
It's truly inspiring. And it's not just about these grand, heroic acts, is it? It's also about how we deal with everyday physical pain or illness, which Marcus Aurelius, dealing with his own chronic conditions, thought a lot about.
Yes, Marcus developed several mental strategies for bearing physical pain and illness with what he called studied indifference. He wasn't pretending it didn't hurt, but he worked to separate his mind, his core self, from the mere physical sensation.
That cognitive distancing again.
Exactly. It's a form of it. He reminded himself that it's not the pain itself that truly upsets us, but our judgments about the pain. This is unbearable. This shouldn't be happening. He recognized that struggling against things we can't control does us more harm than good.
Which modern psychology now calls experiential avoidance, right? Fighting reality.
Precisely. And that avoidance, that struggle, can trap people in a vicious cycle of resistance and secondary suffering, the suffering about the suffering. By accepting pain as an indifferent external event, a natural process, the Stoics aim to minimize that secondary suffering caused by mental resistance. That, too, is an application of courage, even in the quiet moments of dealing with physical discomfort.
So, we have wisdom guiding our judgments, making them clear and rational. We have courage strengthening our resolve, helping us endure and act despite fear or pain. But Stoicism isn't just about individual self-improvement locked away in a room, is it? It has this profound social dimension.
Absolutely critical.
And this is where justice dikaiosune comes in. And it's not just a legal concept for them, right? Not just courts and laws.
Oh, absolutely not. Justice in Stoicism is fundamentally about acting in accordance with universal nature. And crucially, for the Stoics, universal nature includes our inherently social nature as human beings.
We're social animals.
Exactly. So justice is primarily about our social actions, about caring for others, about fulfilling our duties within the human community. The Stoics understood that we are designed for community, for cooperation, and therefore true virtue must extend beyond the individual self.
And the ideal sage embodies this.
Completely. The ideal sage naturally cares for all rational beings as though they were his brothers and sisters. This isn't just tolerance. It blossoms into a profound, general love of humanity, what they called philanthropia.
I remember encountering Heracles' idea of the circles of affection and the sources when preparing for this. That really helped me visualize this outward expansion of concern, moving beyond just oneself or one's immediate family. Can you walk us through how that practice works?
Of course, it's a wonderfully practical visualization. Heracles proposed imagining a series of concentric circles. At the very center is yourself. The next circle out is your immediate family, then extended family, then neighbors, fellow citizens, countrymen, and finally the outermost circle encompasses all of humanity.
Okay, I can picture that.
The practical exercise, the mental work, involves actively trying to pull the circles toward the center. You make a conscious effort to draw those outer circles inward, to regard people in them with the same level of concern you naturally feel for those closer in.
So treating strangers more like family, essentially.
In a sense, yes. It's about deliberately expanding your sphere of concern and sense of kinship. This conscious effort helps cultivate a broader sense of connection and duty, moving from just abstract goodwill to genuine, actionable concern for everyone, recognizing our shared humanity and rationality.
And it also challenges some really common assumptions about how we react to people who do wrong, doesn't it? That Socratic paradox, nobody does wrong willingly, seems incredibly relevant to Stoic justice.
It truly is. This Socratic idea, which the Stoics fully embraced, suggests that no man does evil knowingly, which also entails that no man does it willingly. People do wrong out of ignorance, out of mistaken beliefs about what is truly good for them.
That's a very different perspective from seeing people as inherently malicious.
It is, and Marcus Aurelius famously applied this principle. When the general Avidius Cassius usurped power and rebelled against him, Marcus chose to give Cassius the benefit of the doubt, assuming he was simply mistaken in his judgment, not fundamentally evil.
That takes incredible strength.
It does. Marcus advised viewing others' actions through a simple dichotomy. If they do right, accept it gladly. If they do wrong, recognize that they likely do it unwillingly out of ignorance or mistaken judgment about what's truly good. This is a profound application of justice through understanding and compassion, rather than immediate condemnation or rage. It helps diffuse anger, encourages teaching or guidance where possible, and fosters a more just response rooted in reason.
So beyond just understanding others' mistakes as ignorance, how do we actively practice justice through our social actions? Especially today, when it's so easy to just retreat into our own bubbles.
That's where the Stoic idea of active assistance and fulfilling our social roles comes in. It's not enough to intellectually grasp that humanity is interconnected. It means, for instance, when you witness an injustice, whether large or small, you pause your initial emotional reaction, that impulse perhaps, to rage or despair.
Which often feels like the only reaction.
It can feel that way, but the Stoic approach is to pause and instead calmly ask yourself, what is the most rational, effective way I can apply wisdom and courage to address this situation fairly?
So it's strategic compassion.
You could say that. It might mean speaking up calmly but firmly. It might mean supporting an initiative that promotes fairness. It might simply mean acting with unwavering integrity and fairness in your own small sphere, at home, at work, in your community, knowing that every such action contributes to that larger social nature the Stoics emphasized. It's about being a constructive, rational part of the whole.
And speaking of anger, Seneca had a lot to say about justice versus anger, arguing that anger is actually counterproductive to achieving true justice.
Yes, Seneca was very clear on this. He vehemently argued that it's always better to act calmly from a sense of loyalty, duty, or justice than to rage for revenge. He viewed anger, like all unhealthy passions, as fundamentally a judgment made in the mind, specifically, a faulty judgment, and therefore something controllable, at least in principle.
But anger feels so powerful, like a motivator for justice sometimes.
It can feel that way, but Seneca argued that once a judgment leading to anger has been made and accepted, it becomes this tangible, almost physical experience that often impairs reason. For Stoics, uncontrolled anger prevents you from making wise judgments about the situation and, paradoxically, makes you less effective in pursuing genuine, sustainable justice. It distorts perception and often leads to actions you later regret, actions that might even be unjust themselves.
So the aim is to help others, to be just, but not necessarily get emotionally swept away by their suffering. There's a clear distinction there between active, rational compassion and something like pity.
Yes, and this connects right back to the bigger picture. The Stoics understood that human nature is inherently social. To be truly virtuous, our actions must extend beyond ourselves, but, and this is key, they must do so rationally. They were deeply affectionate toward humanity, none more concerned with the common good, always advocating for active assistance to those in need.
But not titty.
They distinguished this act of help from pity. Pity, as they saw it, was a form of distress that serves no purpose and impairs good judgment. For the Stoics, pity often involved taking on another person's suffering as your own, becoming despondent or overwhelmed yourself, which could actually hinder your ability to offer rational, effective assistance.
So you become part of the problem, not the solution.
In a way, yes. True Stoic compassion was about clear-eyed aid and support, driven by reason and a sense of shared humanity, not by shared emotional paralysis or unhelpful distress.
Okay, so we have wisdom guiding, courage strengthening, and justice connecting us socially in a rational way. The final cardinal virtue, temperance or strisicina, seems to bring it all together internally. It sounds like a kind of self-mastery, a way of orchestrating our inner world.
That's a very good way to put it. Temperance is all about inner discipline, moderation, self-control, and the avoidance of excess in all things desires, emotions, appetites. It cultivates a well-ordered soul, ensuring that our desires and impulses are aligned with and governed by reason.
And Socrates was the model here.
Socrates was a huge example for the Stoics in this regard. They admired how he knew both how to abstain from or enjoy those things, in want whereof most men show themselves weak, and in the fruition, intemperate. He could take pleasure or leave it. He remained firm and constant in both events, demonstrating a profound level of self-governance, not being swayed unduly by either lack or abundance.
So it's not just about denial, is it? But about balance and control.
Exactly. That's the key. Not just constantly denying desires, but truly mastering them so they don't control you. It's about achieving freedom from being ruled by our appetites, rather than simply seeking freedom to indulge them endlessly.
Which seems to be a more common view of freedom today.
Perhaps. But the Stoics warned that every want that springs, not from any need, but from vice, is of a like character. However much you pile up for it will serve not to end, but to advance desire. It's like trying to quench thirst with salt water.
You just get thirstier.
Precisely. The wise person, in contrast, keeps to natural limits, understanding that true contentment, true satisfaction, comes from within, from a well-ordered mind, not from endlessly pursuing external gratification, which is, by its nature, insatiable.
And Epictetus really hammered this home about the danger of external dependencies.
He did. He constantly reminded his students that if your sense of well-being depends on external things, like your relationships going perfectly, your career hitting certain milestones, accumulating possessions, or even your physical appearance, then you have effectively handed over your happiness to the whims of something or someone else.
You've given away your control.
Exactly. This dependency guarantees frustration and disappointment because these externals are ultimately not fully, or sometimes not at all, within our control. Temperance helps break that dependency.
That's a powerful reminder of where we often mistakenly place the source of our happiness. So temperance is essentially about taming the mind through reason, as one source put it. What does that actually look like in practice, especially in our busy, stimulus-rich modern lives? It sounds like hard work.
It is hard work. Stoicism is fundamentally a practice, not a set of claims to admire, as Pierre Hadot emphasized. Taming the mind through reason requires the same kind of commitment that we associate with martial arts or other demanding physical disciplines.
Like training a muscle.
Exactly like training a muscle. It's difficult because our judgments, fears, and desires are often habitual, ingrained, and constantly reinforced by our environment. Think of the endless social media scrolls designed to hook our attention, or the constant advertising urging consumption.
The headwinds are strong.
They are. So in practice, temperance means being mindful and intentional about what you let into your mind and body. It could be setting deliberate limits on screen time. It could be practicing mindful eating, really paying attention to hunger and satiety cues. It could be choosing to delay gratification in small ways rather than acting on every single impulse immediately. The reward, the Stoics argued, isn't deprivation, but genuine happiness, equanimity, and sanity.
But it's definitely not about being a killjoy, is it? Because honestly, that's the stereotype you often hear about Stoics, that they're just perpetually frowning, denying themselves any pleasure in life.
That stereotype is really quite inaccurate. The Stoics were decidedly not killjoys. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, believed he could derive just as much, if not more, healthy enjoyment from the simple things as any unrestrained pleasure seeker.
Healthy enjoyment, that's key.
Yes. He argued that the life of someone like Marcus, who exercises moderation, is surely more pleasant and involves less self-inflicted suffering than the life of someone constantly chasing excessive indulgence, which often leads to hangovers, regrets, and deeper dissatisfaction.
The boom and bust cycle of pleasure-seeking.
Exactly. Socrates, similarly, famously claimed that those who practice self-control actually obtain more genuine pleasure from basic things like food and drink because, as he put it, hunger is the best relish. When you're truly hungry, simple food tastes amazing. Temperance enhances appreciation. It's about appreciating what is truly useful and natural and cultivating what the Stoics called eupathia, healthy, rational, good feelings, like joy based on virtue, rational caution instead of fear, and rational wishing instead of craving, rather than endlessly chasing superficial satisfactions that ultimately leave you feeling empty and wanting more.
Okay, so we've explored each of these 4 fundamental powers: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance individually. But the true depth of Stoicism, the real magic maybe, comes from understanding how they actually work together in harmony.
Yes, this is the capstone, really.
It's not just a nice idea that they coexist. It's the very definition of a flourishing human life, this complete, integrated moral excellence.
And here's where it gets really interesting and perhaps counterintuitive for some. The Stoics were explicit about this integration. Some sources state flat out that no part of philosophy had any priority, but that they were all mixed together, and therefore their teaching mixed too. The parts were fundamentally inseparable.
All mixed together.
Exactly. This idea of the unity of virtue implies something quite radical. You cannot be truly wise without also being brave, just, and temperate. They aren't separate compartments.
Can you give an example of how that works, how one requires the others?
Sure. Take wisdom. Knowing the right thing to do, that's the core of wisdom, right? But that knowledge is utterly useless. It doesn't become action if you lack the courage to actually do it, especially if it's difficult, unpopular, or frightening.
So wisdom needs courage to be effective.
Absolutely. Conversely, think about courage without wisdom. What is that? It could easily just be recklessness, rashness, not virtue at all. True courage is always informed by wisdom, knowing what dangers are worth facing, for what reasons, and how to face them appropriately.
And justice, how's that fit in?
Well, to be truly just requires the wisdom to discern what is fair and right for everyone involved in a situation. It requires the courage to uphold that justice, even when it's difficult or costly. And it requires the temperance to act out of a calm sense of duty and fairness, rather than being driven by anger, personal bias, or excessive emotional reactions. You see how they all lean on each other.
Yes, it's becoming much clearer. They are completely mutually dependent and reinforcing.
Totally. You can't isolate one.
It really is like that symphony analogy we touched on earlier. Each instrument, each virtue, needs the others to create the full, rich sound of a well-lived life, rather than just 4 disconnected solos. I recall one source even drew a powerful parallel to Gestalt therapy here, which felt very apt.
That's a great connection to make. The Gestalt insight that the whole determines the parts, that the overall configuration gives meaning to the individual elements, perfectly illustrates the Stoic view. It powerfully contrasts with the more common assumption that the whole is merely the sum of its elements, like just adding bricks together.
So your character isn't just a collection of discrete virtues tallied up.
No. In Stoicism, it's an integrated whole where each virtue's expression is shaped, refined, and perfected by the presence and influence of all the others. They mutually reinforce and define one another. This integrated functioning is what leads to what they called virtuoso agency.
Virtuoso agency, I really like that term. So it's not just about doing good things occasionally, but doing them with this complete, integrated excellence, where every part of your being, your reason, your will, your actions is aligned.
Precisely. Ideal Stoic agency is virtuoso agency. It's an ability, a skill developed to the limit of human capability. This isn't just about maximizing your individual traits in isolation, but coordinating them seamlessly into completely integrated endeavors.
And the goal is always virtue itself.
Always. This ideal agency is relentlessly aimed at the only thing that is ultimately good, namely achieving and sustaining Stoic virtue in the singular, that unified state of excellence. Marcus Aurelius paints a picture of this ideal sage as someone at one with the divine element of reason within himself, totally uncorrupted by fleeting pleasure, Untouched by irrational reactions to pain, someone died deep with justice, and who calmly accepts fate, what nature brings.
Die deep with justice, that phrase again. It suggests it permeates everything.
It does. This comprehensive description shows a fully integrated moral being whose every thought, feeling, and action expresses the full harmony of all the virtues working as one.
Okay, this inevitably brings us back to one of the most fundamental, maybe the most famous Stoic teachings, the dichotomy of control. How does that framework fit into this picture of integrated virtue, and why is it so crucial for achieving it?
Ah, yes. Epictetus's fundamental teaching, often summarized as of things some are in our power and others are not, is absolutely central to understanding the unity of virtue and, frankly, the whole Stoic project.
Remind us what falls into each category again.
According to Epictetus, only our inner world of judgment and volition is truly and completely in our power. Specifically, our opinions, hupoliepsis, movement towards a thing, horme, desire, aversion, eklysis, turning from a thing. In short, our volitions, our choices, our judgments about things.
Our inner responses and decisions.
Exactly. Everything else, our body, our property, our reputation, the actions of others, political events, health, wealth, all that is ultimately not in our complete power. We can influence some of it, but we don't have absolute control.
And this framework directly explains why the Stoics insisted that only the wise person is free.
Precisely. The wise person, the sage, possesses perfect self-command because they focus their desire and aversion only on what is truly in their power, their own judgments and actions. They align their will with reality, with what is possible. Therefore, they do exactly what they wish because they only wish for what they can control, to act virtuously. They are not enslaved by chasing uncontrollable externals or tormented by irrational fears about things they can't prevent.
So virtue is the only good because it's the only thing that's entirely within our internal sphere of control. That makes it impervious to external fortune or misfortune, which in turn means our eudaimonia, our flourishing, becomes truly unshakable, dependent only on us.
That's the powerful core of it. This perspective underscores why virtue, being entirely internal and controllable, is the only good in the absolute moral sense, and why all external things are merely indifferent.
Preferred or dispreferred, but morally neutral.
Exactly. They might be preferred, like health, or dispreferred, like sickness, but they don't determine our moral character or our ultimate well-being, our eudaimonia. This radical shift in perspective empowers us, you, to focus your energy where it truly matters, on cultivating this integrated, unified virtue. It's about making your internal fortress of character truly unassailable.
Now, given that the ideal sage is presented as this very rare, almost mythical figure who has reached the limit of human capability, this whole framework isn't just for those enlightened few, is it? What about the rest of us, the people just trying to make progress, the proficientes?
That's a crucial point. No, it's definitely not just for sages. The Stoics were very clear that the moral agent is relentlessly active, not passive. And this applies just as much, perhaps even more so, to those who are consciously making progress toward virtue, the proficientes, those who are advancing.
So the path itself involves this active striving.
Absolutely. This path involves constant attention to and questioning of your thoughts and impulses. It requires utilizing what Pierre Hadot called spiritual exercises, practical techniques like contemplation, self-examination, memorization of key principles, and rigorous self-examination was key.
Like the questions Seneca and Epictetus recommended asking oneself daily.
Exactly those. Seneca, for example, reviewed his day each evening, asking himself, what bad habit did you work on today? What vice did you challenge? In what respect are you a better person? Epictetus suggested a similar review. What did you do wrong today? What did you do right today? What should you work on in the future? This daily inward focus, this relentless but calm self-assessment, is how moral progress is made, step by step, slowly integrating each virtue into a more coherent, unified whole.
So it's not really about suddenly eradicating all emotion or desire, which is another misconception about Stoics. It's more about aligning our emotions and desires with reason.
Precisely. Moral progress is typified not by the extirpation of all emotion and desire, but by the occurrence of desires and feelings which are dispositions of a governing principle increasingly consistent with right reason. It's about transforming the unhealthy passions, like irrational fear, anger, craving, into the healthy, rational good feelings, eupathia, we mentioned earlier.
Right, like rational joy instead of hedonistic pleasure, rational caution instead of paralyzing fear, rational wishing instead of desperate craving.
Exactly. These are emotions, yes, but emotions that are in harmony with reason and aligned with virtue. They serve your unified character rather than dictating its terms.
And all of this entire project of cultivating unified virtue, is ultimately tied into that grand Stoic concept of living according to nature. How does that final piece fit?
That really is the unifying principle of the entire philosophy. The two fundamental concepts underpinning Stoicism are logos, reason, the rational structure of the universe, and physis, nature, the way things are and unfold. They believe the cosmos itself is informed by reason, that there is an inherent rational order.
A kind of cosmic intelligence.
You could put it that way. And Stoicism, as a way of life, seeks complete correspondence between language and conduct on the one hand and the occurrence of natural events on the other hand. It's about aligning our inner world with the outer reality.
So living virtuously is living naturally.
For the Stoics, yes. The life lived finely, that is, according to virtue, will in fact be natural. This isn't just saying do whatever feels natural. It's an ethical blueprint. It means aligning our specific rational human nature with the broader rational order of the universe, accepting what fate or providence brings, the physics aspect, reasoning correctly about it, the logic aspect, and acting always in accordance with the unified virtue of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, the ethics aspect. These aren't separate acts, but expressions of that single, unified, rational self living in harmony with the whole.
So thinking about the listener, what does this all mean for you tuning in today? It means, fundamentally, that this isn't about achieving perfect virtue overnight. That's not the point.
Not at all.
It's about understanding that every single act of wisdom, every moment of courage, every choice for justice, every instance of temperance you practice, they aren't isolated events. They actually strengthen the whole of your character.
They weave the fabric tighter.
Exactly. It's a holistic endeavor. It's about creating a truly unified self, which in turn makes you more resilient, more connected to others in a healthy way, and ultimately more profoundly fulfilled in a way that external circumstances can't easily shake.
Well said. To recap our deep dive then, the Stoic concept of the unity of virtue reveals something profound. That wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance are not isolated ideals you can pick and choose from. They are inseparable, interconnected powers.
Like strands of a strong rope.
Exactly. They harmonize to create a single, unshakable state of moral excellence. They're not just abstract philosophical concepts. They are practical, intertwined tools for navigating the complexities of life and guiding you toward a truly meaningful existence.
And as we close, let's consider this really provocative thought, one that wasn't from the Stoics directly, but resonates so deeply with their approach to virtue. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust and founded logotherapy,
An incredible figure.
he offered this profound piece of advice. Live as if you're living a second time, and act as if you're about to make the first mistake.
Wow, that hits hard.
Doesn't it? And it aligns so perfectly with the Stoic practice of constant self-assessment, that daily reflection, and the relentless pursuit of a consistently virtuous, unified self. Always learning, always refining.
It's a powerful reminder that pursuing isolated good acts here and there, without consciously cultivating that foundational integrated character, risks instability. You might be brave one day and foolish the next, or just one moment and selfish the next. Frankl's advice pushes for that consistency.
So the final question for you, the listener, is this. What would it mean for your life, starting right now, if you approached every decision, every interaction, not as just a standalone act, but as an opportunity to manifest the complete integrated excellence of all your virtues working together?
To truly live as if this moment is your second chance, informed by past errors, striving consciously for that holistic, unbreakable moral core, what would change?
We invite you to consider that in your own journey of building character and finding your own form of eudaimonia. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.